and welcome to today's Maniac Talk. Today we have a very dynamic speaker who is actually one of the speakers who is invited to speak to a lot of people. So of course it's going to be entertaining. But to help us understand who the speaker is, I asked Maurice Henderson to help us with the introduction.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. April Joyce Erickson. She's the deputy to the chief technologist in the engineering directorate here at Goddard. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, educated in the New York City Public Schools and Cambridge school system. She received her her BS degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering at MIT, her master's in engineering and her mechanical engineering PhD at Howard University. She's been a guest researcher at Harvard Radcliffe University. The majority of her time in engineering has been spent here at Goddard, some 20 plus years in the engineering directorate, and initially she worked on guidance, navigation, and control disciplines. And Dr. Erickson has also worked at headquarters in the program executive office for earth science and space science. During the last 10 years, though, she's been an instruments manager for the near-infrared spectrograph for the James Webb Space Telescope, engineering project engineer for the LOLA instrument, or the laser altimeter on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was launched in 2009. And for 3 years, 3.5 years, for many of us who were very interested in ISAT-2, she was the Deputy Instrument Project Manager for the Advanced Topographic Laser Altimeter. This $480 million LiDAR instrument will continue the work of ISAT to observe ice sheet, elevation changes, sea ice, freeboard, and vegetation canopy, which is very important part of the work here in the earth science community. Her current focus as Deputy Chief Technologist is on CubeSat and SmallSat technology. Dr. Erickson serves on many boards and positions of community leadership. She's a chair, or just past chair, of the board of the middle school at Howard University for math and science. But most of all, for me, she is truly an outstanding technical leader, and above all, an outstanding coach, mentor, and friend to young people all across the United States. And I'd like to introduce now Dr. April Joy Erickson.
Thank you, Maurice. So when I was asked to do this talk, it was really to give more of a focus for interns. So if you're here for science and technical, it's not going to happen today. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I do, but it's really about sort of my life and how it was impacted by mentors, how it changed with the exposure that I was given through programs, and what sort of is my passion and what drives me to further our STEM pipeline, in a sense. And so some of my colleagues started scaring me because they started saying they were showing up, right? So I don't often talk about me here. I always talk to summer interns every year. And so when I rush out of here, I'm going to do their technical presentation seminar. And I've been doing that for 15 years. I was one of the first people that actually won the student competition. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But so it's more geared toward a younger person, but you might get some life lessons yourself. I'll say I'm not as young, so we'll start off. And I actually wrote a manuscript. I spent time writing a manuscript, and people often say I should write a book, so maybe this is the beginning of that book. One funny thing, if this was supposed to capture people's attention. People were excited about Maniac, right? It's kind of fun. It's supposed to be something to laugh about. And so I actually laughed a little because as I tried to write this little blurb up about me, if anybody noticed, I used the word baller. Did anybody read that? Yeah. So one of my instrument manager friends sent me an email and said, this has got to be the first official NASA transcript that used the word baller. And I'm a baller. So I actually had my jacket on, but it was a little hot and it was rubbing against the microphone. So you can see the guns. I still got a little bit of them. I'm 50 plus, but I'm doing pretty good, so I'm hanging in there. So I want to start off with saying thank you. There are only 86,400 seconds in a day, and I truly appreciate you lending me your ear during some of these precious moments. You must be saying, why should I listen to Dr. Erickson as a speaker today? A good question. Thinking back to TMT training, anybody here take that? They always have this little exercise that says, you know, if you were to choose from a list of animals, what would best describe yourself? And so I chose the lion, the lioness, right? Lead, feed and keep the pack together, moving towards one goal at a time, protective of the team, watchful, strong, quick, stealthy, and athletic. Now, does that give you a little insight into me? Well, maybe, but okay, so I'm not so young. I'm a woman, gifted, and black. And if you have trouble relating to that not so young, black or female, I'm quite sure all of you can relate to the fact that all of us here are gifted. As a child, I grew up in a family that placed a strong emphasis on education, encouraged me to do my best. My greatest motivator was and still is my mom. She would often tell me, you can be anything you want to be. With a legacy of 2 grandfathers and a great-grandfather who were mechanical engineers and numerous aunts, great aunts, and a mother who were educated, it's only fitting that I have traveled a path of working both professions. My family legacy has really had a direct impact on my life. I once heard Alex Haley say, his father used to say, if you see a turtle sitting on top of a fence post, you know he had help getting there. I consider myself extremely fortunate to have acquired the various degrees, the accomplishments, and the awards in my life. Many times I faltered, but I've been lucky to have a giving and inspiring family. With that said, I always say thank you to my ancestors, my family, my friends, my colleagues, all of my mentors, and even my students, because they inspire me as well. And I would like you to realize that you have also been able to achieve the various accomplishments in your outstanding careers due to your ancestors and your family and community leaders, teachers and mentors, and hopefully your bosses as well. My path to becoming a rocket scientist, an engineer, or professor was only achieved through the commitment of many others. Particularly was my mom, who really sought out the best educational opportunities for me and my sisters. This may seem, you know, sort of like that cliche story, but in this particular case, my mom was pretty much a single parent. At first, I was going to throw up some pictures, and you'll see a little bit later, there's a picture of Bed-Stuy. But, you know, she raised her daughters in a low-income housing, and there's pretty much what our projects look like. And we were living in the inner city of Brooklyn, New York. I mean, I remember actually one of my babysitters was actually killed when he was 16, and I was probably about 6 or 7, and I just couldn't understand that. But my mom's fortitude to put her daughters on the road to success placed us in the New York school busing program. And we were to attend, you know, schools some distance from our house. These were predominantly Caucasian schools, me and my younger sister. And that's my sister, who's only a year apart from me. And see, even then, I was a baller, right? I mean, I was an excellent student. I was a very good athlete. And my mom always pushed me because I often was the only girl, like on the elementary school basketball team. I remember they would tell me I could go sit and watch while the boys played. My mother wasn't having it. So she forced them to allow me to at least, you know, shoot the ball around while they were playing. I also remember I was the only girl, the co-captain on the punch ball team. Anybody ever play punch ball? I played punch ball they would block off the street right next to our little school, and we'd play punch ball during lunch. But it was that start for the push. My mom was pushing, and she was always supportive. I was always told I was smart, and sometimes I would hear adults say I'm independent. I remember seeing my uncle that I hadn't seen in a while. He says, you know, you were always the one walking up front. You'd stand at the corner waiting for us to catch up. So I grew up believing that. And it was during first grade that I actually had the first opportunity. You know, and I must say, these are the Brooklyn facilities, so I showed a little smattering of those. But it was the first time that I actually had the opportunity to watch the United States astronauts go to the moon. I had been bused to a predominantly white school, and parents had portable TVs there. I didn't know anything about that. Parent brought in a black and white TV, and we sat around, crowded around, and watched the men go to the moon. But, you know, for me, most of us grew up watching Star Trek. And I must say, Star Trek did have an influence on me, because if you think about Star Trek, you know, Captain James Kirk and that very culturally diverse crew he had, I didn't see limitations that we often see in the real world. However, I often dreamed of many other different professions, I must say. I truly was not sure what I might do. And so along the time, you know, as I was growing up, I thought I might be an artist, I might be a karate star, you know, track star. My parents had run track, that's how they met. A school teacher, even a lawyer. I was on the debate team. And it was during junior high school when I enrolled in a program, they used to call it SP, Special Progress, that I was in for gifted and talent class. No, the only African-American student that I realized I had this special aptitude for math and science. It was actually there that I won second place in the 8th grade science fair competition. And I'm pretty competitive, so you normally would say, second place, but I'll tell you why it was so particularly special for me. My grandfather helped me build a glass milk barometer. At that time, we're still getting glass, you know, bottles of milk. And he helped me build the stand. I put the little cellophane tape around the top of that glass milk bottle, put a nice tight rubber band, and then a toothpick. And then every day I listened to the weather, and I calibrated that barometer with that little toothpick on a piece of graph paper. And then when we got to the competition, I actually was able to talk about how that related to weather. Aha, my first instrument. Seems funny because fast forward so many years, what do I end up doing, right? Now, I mentioned that that was second place. Now, you'll notice I have a little gift for gab. I can talk. So I talked up a good thing and said how it related to society and why it was important. But the kid that won first place, it was a hard act to follow. He had gotten a packaged hovercraft kit. Rich kid, right? I mean, my instrument cost about $2. I still keep on budget now, right? This kid had this fancy little thing, so what could I do, right? Well, I was pretty proud of that fact, and to this day, it was my first, you know, sort of experience at winning at doing science. And I still have fond memories of my grandfathers, and I must say to men, please never, ever discourage women from doing things like working on the car and stuff like that. My grandfathers would let me climb up on the scaffold to paint the house, fix the gutters, repair things in the house. And so I must say I'm pretty proficient at fixing things. I was fixing the AC unit the other night at my rental property. When my mother brought home anything that needed to be put together, I would help to put it together, the beginning of solving and, you know, true problem-solving skills. It wasn't really until high school that some of these things began to sort of fit together. I began to realize that, you know, I was really good in science and math. I actually tested for all the 3 schools you see there, Brooklyn Tech, Bronx Schools of Science, and I was going to go to Stuyvesant. I passed exams. But I also really liked Cambridge, Massachusetts. I loved running through the yards of Harvard and, you know, thought I might be a lawyer. Remember, I was on the debate team, so I thought that was a possibility. And I got a scholarship to the Cambridge School of Weston. I want you to note one thing, too. Where is the little laser? Because you might take this in perspective now. That is me. I then did have some rise. Okay, and then there I am again, one of the few African-American. I was actually the team captain. I played point guard on offense and forward on defense, and I was the backup center. Here's the center, but I had rise. So I really enjoyed Cambridge School of Weston, and it was the beginning of, you know, sort of pieces starting to fit together. The description said STEAM, and why I put STEAM because it has that A that people often leave out for art. And this school was actually a very artistic school. We had professional people that taught us, you know, pottery, photography, you know, drawing. My friends would always be in awe because we'd had nude models for our drawing class. I want to come to your school, right? But so I had that other balance, which, you know, can be very helpful as you get older and we get older. We want to have good balance in our life. So while attending this private school in Massachusetts, one of my teachers, who was actually a substitute teacher, come on in, don't worry about it. I'm going to keep talking. This substitute teacher was an MIT alum, and her husband taught at the school as well. He taught physics. And she was teaching Algebra 2, and she would give me the homework in the beginning of the class, and I would go to the back of the class, do the homework, which was kind of rude while she was teaching. But I was already reading the book and handing in the homework, so I wouldn't have to do it on my very long commute home, because I took either three trains or 2 buses in a van, depending on which way, or the commuter rail to get to and from school. But I was kind of used to that. We did that in New York all the time. So it wasn't a problem to get to and from school. But she said, I think you should attend this summer program at MIT. And she said it would be an opportunity for me to be introduced to engineering. Now, I must say, engineering for me was, my memory was that my grandfather worked for the Metro system in New York. He took me to his job sometimes, and they would have the big board. You know, if you ever saw that old movie, Pelham 1, 2, 3, and they show that big board where this guy is, you know, meandering the train system. That's where he worked. And so for at least 1 year in junior high school, I wore a locomotive hat to school with 2 pigtails. And that's what I knew about an engineer. I didn't really know much about engineering. But she said, you should attend this school, you know, this program. You have this knack. And I was like, what's that? What's this knack? And for most of us that have entered the engineering career, it's often characterized by this.
I'm worried about little Dilbert. He's not like other kids.
What do you mean?
Yesterday, I left him alone for a minute, and he disassembled the TV, our clock, and the stereo.
That's perfectly normal. Kids take things apart.
Ooh. The part that worries me is he used the components to build a ham radio set.
Oh dear.
Is that bad?
Normally I'd want to run an EEG on him, but the machine isn't working. It's worse than I feared.
What is it?
I'm afraid your son has the knack.
The knack?
The knack. It's a rare condition characterized by an extreme intuition about all things mechanical and electrical, and utter social ineptitude.
Can he lead a normal life?
No. He'll be an engineer.
No!
There.
So it's an actually cool video, and I often show it to kids, and we get a good laugh. So I went to MIT. She said I had this knack, and I did. I did like to build things, and so there I am. And I actually ended up on the Tech Talk for MIT my junior year of high school, that picture. And we did a bridge competition, and I had the opportunity to go to an Air Force base. And that Air Force base, we got a chance to do Flight Simulator. And this simulator looked like an egg, and you got to step down in it, and then it spun around. And I remember a couple of students going before me, and they were getting these really high scores, 300s and 400s. And then I got in, and I remember I had a screen, and when it came time to take and do a bank turn to go back to the airport, I started feeling like a little wobbly, and then it told me to reach out and put my landing gear, and I started getting a little dizzy. And I said, oh man, I gotta hold on, you know, I'm gonna get ready to roll, and I kind of balanced it out, and then I landed. I got out, and I had a score of like 103. I was like, dang, man, everybody else had like 300s and 400s. What did I do wrong? And then I remember this guy came in with his nice flight suit and strut. He had perfect, you know, sort of shoulders back, and he said, I'm a flight instructor. And if you got a score of 100 and below, it was a pilot score. Oh, shoot. I think I got this. I like this. And so that was actually my aha moment, that maybe I do really like engineering. Maybe I really like fitting. And hey, I really like things that fly and move. And so that's what the UNITE program, which is now called MITES, and it's actually a very successful program. It's for minority youth. It's grown by leaps and bounds because it was only 2 weeks then, and now it's something like 6 to 8 weeks. And 90% of the students enter a career path in engineering and science. And so, unfortunately, with me hitting that button late, because now I'd gone to sort of this hippie school, and that's what some students described it when I went to speak in Massachusetts. Oh, you went to that hippie school. I had to cram. I had already taken all 3 of my sciences. I took earth science and loved it, but physiology and biology, I took it because my friend said, oh, take it, it's easy. Well, I still needed to take physics, chemistry, calculus, any of those. So I crammed in my senior year all those classes. Note, one thing, not quite ready for calculus. So I'm going to go back to my, my notes, and I say that teacher had, you know, that inspirational moment, you know, got me ready, and I say determined but ill-prepared for MIT. Now, I did end up going to MIT, and I got in, and I wanted to read you something. You mentioned that I went to a program at Radcliffe, and I wrote this one that summer. And it's to give you a snapshot of sort of my personality, this young lady from Brooklyn, a baller, right? And it said, it's the summer after my freshman year, I quickly packed up my gear into my gym bag. Knee brace, sleeve. I've had 3 knee surgeries. And a mouthpiece, a clean t-shirt, fresh socks, and H2O. The b-ball I would carry, that's what I call it, b-ball. I grinned to myself thinking how I bounced the ball to class almost every day through the halls and infinite corridor at MIT. Yes, I did. Everybody knew when I was coming. Remember what Fats told me, that was one of my good balling friends. Never just carry the basketball. If you're walking, you should bounce it all the way there and all the way back. I would bounce that ball down Memorial Drive, hearing the sounds of the river in the distant background, water from the sprinkler hitting the cobblestones on Peabody Terrace courtyard, the honking geese or quacking ducks on the riverfront, and the clicking of a swing derailleur as a bicyclist goes by. Children giggling and laughing in the park. I hear the sounds, but I'm really listening to my inner self. I picture myself running through the moves, yeah, all I'll make on the court, and also preparing my mental strategy and tactics for the court. Remember, I'm a woman playing amongst men. Not quite as strong, not quite as athletic, but just as smart, if not smarter. I speed up my walk to get to Corporal Burns Park, and when I reach the edge of the fence to the court, I yell out, "Who's got next?" Nobody? Then I do. As I step through the hole in the fence, I've just entered a new dimension. It's a world of hot, sweaty bodies, of which all the inhabitants are men, all except me. On this day, the breeze is barely blowing. The digital readout on the Coca-Cola sign on the Alston side of the river displays 96 degrees. You can smell the oil from the melting tar. You can feel its stickiness snatching at your sneakers as you run up and down the court. The white lines seem like such a contrast to the blacktop court. But they are a necessary boundary to play the game in this world. One must be careful not to step out because it was a small court fully populated with 9 men and 1 young lady. You must play well because there's a plenty of able-bodied men squeezed in around the fence and sidelines. Play tough defense. Always remain strong. Don't let anyone score easily. Foul them if you have to. No easy baskets here. Offense now. You're the smallest on the court, therefore you're naturally the point guard. It's a cool position, but you don't have to get to shoot as much. The shooters always get all the applause and cheers. You're not as fast as the other guards, but it's a thinking position and you are a smart player. You run the offense, bring the ball up the court, concentrate, focus, handle the ball, give them a little fake, a crossover. You have got to get by them quickly and get the ball up the court. Your teammates are waiting. They're depending on you. Boy, he's playing you close. He's bumping you hard. He isn't giving you an inch. That's okay. Stand your ground, bump him back. Give him a little shoulder and a head fake. Ouch, that hurt. He scratched me with his razor stubble on his chin. All right, you're not bleeding, but damn, that was close. Where's my respect? This is my neighborhood court, ironically on Harvard's property. Wow, my face is really burning. Temperatures are rising and tempers are flaring. Finally, foul! Get off my back, man. A push, no, really a shove. A quick step back and a square up. what the hell are you doing? What do you mean? What am I doing? I'm playing defense. I have a little razor stubble burn on the side of my cheek. You shouldn't be that close. I look around thinking, where are all my boys, really men? My regular b-ball running partners are nowhere to be found. Regardless, I stand my ground. Quickly, other associates jump to my defense to get the game going on so we can finish. I'm seething mad, but I hold my cool. The important thing is to win the game. I think to myself, this white boy don't have no respect. I've grown up in this court, in this arena, and I've been trained by some of the best in the school of hard knocks, and I know I got skills. I've got game. All right, who's got next? There's an analogy there. Think about it. Remember my last statement before the snapshot, determined but ill-prepared for MIT. Upon entering MIT, I had not taken calculus. For the first time, I cried in frustration when I failed to do derivatives in a summer math class. For over a year, I played catch-up in math at MIT. And it didn't catch up. I mean, I never really caught up because I failed DiffQ. I used to be sort of embarrassed to say that. Not only did I fail it once, I failed it twice. I took it the second semester with the math majors, big mistake. I will never do that ever again. And that's when you should always go to your upperclassmen. The teacher that taught math that semester won a prize that was comparable to the Nobel Prize in math. He was awesome. But it was a learning experience. It was a chance to sort of regroup. And fortunately for me, later I had my advisor who actually said, you know, you can do this. The initial advisor, though, neglected me. I'd only seen him twice that entire school year, and he went off to vacation and said, on my folder, this student can't make it at MIT. He suggested a different college. I changed my advisor to a phenomenal woman, which was Sheila Whitnall. And Sheila Whitnall became later the Secretary of the Air Force. We still have a great relationship. She was a great mentor. My mom, of course, was extremely supportive during those rough times at MIT. And I took a semester off and I went to City College of New York. Needless to say, they taught the math class like these are tools to solve these problems. Here are the tricks. I scored a 98 on the final, and later I taught math classes at Bowie State. So I think I've got that one under my belt. Persistence. I was also told I would be a great salesman by one of my physics professors. At the time, I didn't appreciate it, but I now realize every great leader must get their supporters to buy into their ideas. So it's not a bad trait, I guess. I take it as a compliment now. Bittersweet comments were made during senior dinner because I remember saying, thanks to all the professors that believed in me, thanks to all the professors that didn't. You just made me work harder, and now I'm successfully graduating. My statements opened up prejudiced minds. It probably changed their thoughts of people's abilities, if I'm quite sure. That following day, after that senior dinner, my old advisor happened to see me in the hall, hadn't spoke to me in years. He ran me down in the hallway to ask me about my future plans. I say if he could only see me now. I do visit Dr. Whitnall, who's in her last years of tenure, and she is the woman who has always practiced that tough love type of mentoring. This year, during one of my visits to MIT, she actually told me she was very proud of me. I mean, I was speechless. Imagine me, speechless. During those undergraduate years, I worked on several different projects, and they were pretty much mostly geared towards manned spaceflight. I showed the University of Maryland Neutral Buoyancy Facility because Professor Aiken and Dave Miller were actually some of the professors I worked with at MIT, and then they later came to University of Maryland using the same techniques. There's Sheila there, Dr. Whitnall. I worked on, you know, as you can see, manned spaceflight projects to the moon, to Mars, and it was actually a phenomenal time working in the Space Systems Lab. But in 1986, June of 1986, I received my degree, and that was the year of the first shuttle disaster. And it pretty much shut down the job market for any human space exploration. As a result, I was encouraged by what is one of my best friends to attend graduate school at Howard University in Washington, D.C. That tragic event of the first shuttle disaster pretty much changed my life, changed my career path, and sent me on a path to graduate education. Note again, I was still the only woman in an aerospace engineering discipline or mechanical engineering discipline in the master's and PhD program at Howard University. Just give you a little statistics here on my success. I was often that only black or woman in programs. Junior high school, 1 out of 30, nobody, just myself. High school, 5 out of 350. MIT, 1 out of 120 graduating seniors in that class. Howard University, 1 of 25. However, Howard was the best thing for me. I remember going to request financial support from the dean, and his comments were, "You're going to be like that other woman I gave money. You'll get married, pregnant, and leave." Yeah, they said that. The then dean, Dr. Lucius Walker, gave me that scholarship that semester, and I busted out a 4.0 from that second year until I graduated with my PhD 7 years later. In time, we became academic colleagues, and when I taught as an adjunct professor and mechanical engineer, Dr. Walker would write notes on my lecture notes, leaving them in my box and saying he liked what I was teaching. My admiration and respect grew for him over the years until his recent passing last year. Under the tutelage of my Howard University advisor, Dr. Peter Baimner, I learned to write quality technical papers, presentations, and proposals. He also helped me to get my first NASA internship, which was at the NASA Langley Research Center. Seek good mentors. For the first time in my college career, I ran for election at Howard University and at any university, and served 2 years, 2 terms as a graduate student council president. This was a source of contention for my advisor because I was here to do technical research, yet I was spanning and doing political type stuff and helping other seniors and broadening our community. And it was an awesome experience for leadership opportunity because I was appointed to presidential committees at the university. I also had so many different scholarships and grants to support me. And in that environment, I learned to be resourceful and write well. Yet, to ask when necessary, you know, when you need to. And then, what could people say? All they can say is no. If you don't ask, you'll never know. So I learned to be prepared for the real world, because that's how it is, right? You're not always going to get a yes, but you should ask. And Howard provided supportive faculty, and I would never change my attendance at that HBCU for any other experience. It was during a career fair at Howard that I happened to meet a NASA Goddard co-op recruiter. And he was very positive, but huge cuts resulted in no opportunities that spring. But my interest was piqued. What was Goddard? I was like, I didn't even know what Goddard was. I was 20 minutes away, and I had no idea what Goddard was. Later, I would get to meet some Goddard engineers because they took classes with my advisor. I remember calling him about, you know, programs, and then he never returned my call. And so I started inquiring a little bit about Goddard, and someone said, oh, they have summer programs in the Equal Opportunity Office. And I called, and the then Secretary Terry Patterson answered the phone and said, oh, the deadline is today. Oh, okay. And I went and talked to a professor, and he said, no, call and use my name. Name dropping helps, right? So I dropped the name and was given a chance to interview with then Dillard Mention. I inquired, he said, hey, if you get any one of these people to give you a recommendation, I'll consider your application. I got all 3 because I'd worked with all 3. Persistence. I was accepted into the Sicker Summer Program and worked with the robotics group. I see one of my colleagues here, Simeon, who I've known ever since that first summer. I remember during my presentation, which I won, the first ever NASA Goddard intern summer competition. In the middle of my presentation, the director of AETD, who's then Brian Keegan, started asking me, would I consider a co-op position? Just a few months before that, there weren't any. I often tell students, get your foot in the door and seize the opportunity. As a result, I became the first PhD co-op student they ever had at Goddard. I also said, given the chance, shine. The following spring, I was also asked to attend the first summer NASA Space Academy, the brainchild of Dr. Jerry Zoffin. My NASA Goddard career really spanned many different opportunities. One we already mentioned with the Guidance and Navigation and Control branch, the robotics group. But so I transferred over to the GNC group because it was just a much better fit for my research. And my research at that time was to develop structural dynamics and control, look at the structural dynamics and control of large space structures. The applications were something like the space station. I remember working at GNC, and my work required understanding how the components of a spacecraft work together as I ran dynamic simulations on spacecraft designs and determined how they could move and be controlled during flight. Unfortunately, there was a little disconnect with my second supervisor. I will not pass any names, so there'll be no judgment. We just couldn't see eye to eye, and I didn't feel valued in his organization. I felt that he believed everyone was made from a square cookie cutter. I'm a round peg. I didn't fit in his square hole, but diversity just didn't seem to be in his mindset. He said I did too much outreach. We'll talk about outreach later. But he passed on that perspective to my next supervisor as well, who just happened to be the one that wrote a poor recommendation for me for the astronaut program. I remember when I said to him, well, what did you write? I said, by the way, did you know Al Diaz, who was then our center director, had written a glowing one? His mouth fell open, really. I remember, as a result, having a conversation with the assistant division head, and he suggested taking it out, maybe talking it out with him to see if we could be on the same page for the future. The conversation went nowhere. My mentor at the time was Mary Kiza, and she suggested that maybe it was time to move on. I chose to attend a women's leadership summer program at Harvard-Radcliffe, and I remember my supervisor was pretty upset. As they often say, when you do something and beg forgiveness later, well, that's what I did. I just went ahead and put in my application, and then when I got accepted and just showed him, he said, how could you do that? You are taking resources. You're promising resources. If I send you off, well, it would have looked pretty bad if they didn't send me after getting selected, right? So beg forgiveness after. It worked. I got to Harvard that summer. And then later I went on detail to headquarters. It was some point that summer that I ran into Administrator Golden. I was always running to him as a student. And he asked, how was I doing? What was I doing? And to come by his office. With firm resolve, I took that deep breath, and I met with Administrator Golden in his office to express my desire to work on a special assignment with the Congressional Black Caucus. He said, no, you have a bright technical future. He brought me to tears. I remember leaving his office. He said, listen, reevaluate and come back to me in a few weeks. I did return once I had landed a detail at headquarters. I left his office pretty upset and luckily ran into a former Goddard colleague, Clint Walker, who was working in the chief engineer's office under Brian Keegan. Brian Keegan became my mentor too. He sent my resume to the Earth Science Enterprise, that's what they called it back then, and he set up this interview with Mary Cleave, and the conversation started with, we just can't make up a detail for you. And by the end of the conversation, it was, when can you start as a program exec? That's how I got to headquarters. So don't be afraid to use your salesman or saleswoman skills to promote yourself. My new boss and mentor was a previous astronaut, Dr. Mary Cleave. This detail was a great opportunity to learn how science drives what NASA does. To date myself, the second day at my job was 9/11, that fateful day in America's history. However, it had one silver lining for me, because that was the day I met Dr. Crystal Johnson. And most of you probably know Dr. Johnson, who works here. I can remember at least 2 occasions where Crystal provided guidance and kept, what I should say, my butt out of trouble. You've got to learn when to speak up and when not to, and that's what she was good at doing. We've remained friends ever since. That Earth Science Headquarters detail led to my role as an instrument manager. My mentor really liked me. She would invite me to meetings to listen and learn. I remember one guy would say, "Why is she here?" And she said, "'Cause I invited her." I also remember her saying, you know, there would be different opportunities, and it was sometime, I think that people were pretty busy with doing some other stuff, but we'd get passed back questions from Congress. And if you don't know what Congress does, is you send out your path forward, and then they have questions, and you have to pass back the answers. And I volunteered for that. I remember sitting down with one of the science, and Mary said to me, "I want you to work with the science. I think they'll respect you because you have a PhD, and although you're an engineer, they'll respect the PhD." And so I worked with him, and as we're doing this one late evening, and I'm creating charts to help tell the story of our path forward, he said, "How did you end up doing this?" And I said, "I volunteered." So I gained a different respect from the colleagues as well for volunteering for hard jobs. I kept volunteering for things, and she'd let me do it, and that fresh start was wonderful. I say when things look uncertain, take a step back, reevaluate the decision, and then surge forward. Mary luckily had worked at Goddard, and she understood the importance of having some place to land when you return to Goddard from a detail. You should always have an exit plan from a detail, and I'll let you know that because you need to have some place to land. She also wanted me not to burn any bridges while at headquarters, because at that time I was a program exec for ISAT-1 and SOURCE. I heeded that warning, and later she and Todd Magner reached out to Carolyn Krabs, Rich Barney, Felisa Jones-Selden, and Bonnie Norris, all people who play roles in my life today, to interview for that instrument management position. With no experience as a manager, no instruments under my belt, my new supervisors, Juan and Felicia, set me up as an IM instrument manager, instrument systems engineer, and a proposal manager. What was I thinking when I took that job? I had so many hats, but thank goodness for the university proposal experience. I was told I would be fine and I could learn the instrument from the ground up. Naive me, I believed it, and set to work with the team, which was then the future GEMS team. During that proposal work, I was nominated also for the Accelerated Leadership Program. As part of that program, I did a second short detail at headquarters as a business exec in the space science enterprise. And that was to learn more about how the budget is derived, and then how is it delved out to the different NASA centers and the mission. I wanted to kind of have that top level picture so I could understand what drives us in our jobs here at Goddard. During that short period, Chris Scalise was my mentor before his abrupt moving back to Goddard. That year, the team won funds for the center for a SMEX proposal call. And the uniqueness of that win was we were given funds to develop the technology further in a call that did not have any financial award as such identified. They actually took money from each of the winning groups and gave it to us and told Goddard to match the funds. Talk about a rookie knocking one out the box. I play softball too. I note there that my Brooklyn ways were definitely rearing its ugly head, and I say beautiful head at that time too. And at some point, just after, I had a 360 assessment, and I began to question that assertiveness. I really began to wonder, was that a good thing? My mom often says, "No, honey, you're not aggressive, you're assertive." Carolyn actually told me that your assertive disposition gives you the edge to lead a team, the completion of projects, and to complete projects in a timely manner. Wow, I had found my new role at NASA. So let's sum it up quickly. I consider myself a NASA brat, various internships, programs, hard work, persistent, discipline, funding primarily from NASA. It really paid off. While working on the master's and PhD, I had the opportunity to travel to Germany, Canada, England. And I was doing my research and presenting. This is really cool stuff, you know, controlling large space structures, International Space Station. Because of that, I actually became the first African-American female to receive a PhD in mechanical engineering, the aerospace option, at Howard. The first African-American female federal employee to receive a PhD in engineering at Goddard. And actually the first American at Howard to get a degree in aerospace engineering there as well. I mean, the majority of my career has been spent working at Goddard. And I love this. This facility plays such a vital role in global understanding, the Sun-Earth connection, Earth, of course, and space science. Spending that time at NASA in the Earth and Space Science programs as a program exec, resource executive, those experiences allowed me to understand the contribution of space and science policy, to see how programs were funded. And then returning back to Goddard to become an instrument manager, which requires the leading of teams of scientists and engineers through the development from infancy to flight of space satellite instruments. My career has allowed me to work on projects that are mapping the moon, right? We mentioned that, Lola. We have the opportunities to work on TRIM, ISAT 1 and 2, working with the sun source and MMS, astrophysical phenomenon like RXTE and and I'm not used to saying RXTE because it was XTE when we were there, and JWST and GEMS. I mean, all of these things are phenomenal things that I've gotten opportunity to work on. I truly understand my role in helping to understand our universe. I mean, currently I'm contributing in a new role, and you saw real quick, I showed the pictures of the small spacecraft. But as a Deputy Chief Technologist for AETD, I have the opportunity to empower the fruition of new technology, pushing the envelope of capabilities for our aerospace science community. I help to create partnerships in internal communities, between engineers, science, and management, as well as external organizations, industry, universities, and other government agencies. In particular, loving the new ventures like CubeSats and SmallSats. So you guys are familiar with ISAT, right? I hope so. Yeah. I see one of the instrument managers here. Oh, with that said, if you were to describe myself, I would describe myself with several words. I would say team player, leader, problem solver, and teacher. From the time I was a child, I often was told to be well-rounded academically and physically. As a student, I remember the numerous clubs I was in. I did the science club, art, photography, honors club, debate team, clarinetist in the band. I was a fairly talented athlete, and I continued to play in numerous sports. Yes, I still do. Women's, men's, co-ed sports, basketball, softball, flag football, skiing, and cycling. I've actually traveled around the United States playing in softball, have won 2 national world titles, and a women's military worlds. My friend, the former astronaut Leland Melvin, often tells me, he's actually the former Associate Director of Education from headquarters. There he is up there in that corner. We were in Las Vegas speaking one time, and he says, and I used to say, oh yeah, I'm a jock. And he says, no, you're not, you're a jockette. So I use that term now. But I like to really say the word baller. I have the opportunity to, be on a winning team, and Sunday I won 2 games in softball again. I mention this because we all know how important teaming is, and for me, that was just one of the ways that I learned to work with others. Playing on teams is just a wonderful atmosphere for us to learn to work together. However, no, I have a different teaming situation now. You can see me there. I'm coaching t-ball with my little daughter. I believe in healthy body and healthy mind, and there's no I in team. You saw a quick slide on that. But the opportunity to work with others on these large and small aerospace projects really gives me a lot of joy. I love working with other people. Attending schools away from home in different cultural settings gave me unique experiences of getting along with others from all around the world. I found that particularly helpful when working with our partners on the James Webb Space Telescope and traveling abroad to places like South Africa. My exposure to various environments afforded me a different perspective, I believe, in solving difficult engineering challenges. The leadership skills I have learned from taking on challenging roles from graduate school at Howard University as well as on the board of trustees, and any of the other experiences of leadership have really helped me in my success as an instrument manager at Goddard. It also is very helpful when understanding how to navigate the political environment that we often experience. I swore when I was a kid I was going into science because I wasn't going to be into politics. You all know that politics plays a huge role in how we get our jobs done here at Goddard. During the early school days, other kids thought I was a bookworm. Did anybody feel like that? I see a couple faces smiling. And being an athlete sort of helped me fit in. I've often been called a rocket scientist, which generally characterizes a geeky profession, right? But I've also been called a chic geek by the Congressional Black Caucus. Personally, I consider myself a cool geek. And having the opportunity to present all over the world and at the White House, as well as at Oprah's Leadership Academy in South Africa, have definitely had its awards. I've got an honorary doctorate, but I wear it on my jersey. It says Dr. Doctor for my football team. And when they call, hey, doc, I run into the huddle and say, did somebody call a doctor? I have a lot of fun with that. I must say that my colleagues here having to support me in all the things that I do, from educational outreach, the chance to talk about our science, the chance to build hardware and put it in space. There's no other opportunity anywhere else in this world like that. With that said, I must say reaching the global STEP pipeline is so important for us. If we want to make sure that our center continues to grow, to have good, capable technical students coming in, we have to reach out to them. It's fun too. You get a lot of reward, just like they do when they build a rocket with me, just like we're building our stuff, they get that same reward. And we have an opportunity to make a difference. There's the sister program right here that we have at our own facility. So when people ask me, I've been an aerospace, rocketry, mechanical engineer, professor, computer instructor, career advisor, mentor, teacher, how do you do it all? You just do it. You make the time and you do it. I educate from K to Gray. I say to you guys, read every day, turn off the TV more, work hard, play hard, and don't be afraid to try something different. Explore the realms of science, for it is so intriguing. I also encourage people about outreach because I think it's very important. Our nation's children are the message of the future that we never see. Teach your children, a child, and you've touched the future. I leave you with this thought from the greatest salesman in the world, and it reads, the prizes of life are at the end of each journey, not near the beginning. It is not given to me to know how many steps are necessary in order to reach my goal. I'm going to ask you guys, because you know you've been so silent and quiet, but I'm going to ask for a little participation here. I want you guys to say that statement in red, and if you don't say it nice and loud, I'm going to make you say it again. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say, I will persist until I succeed. 1, 2, 3. I will persist until I succeed. That was so weak. Come on now, you got to pump it up. You got to say things like you mean it, and you will achieve it. So one more time. 1, 2, 3. I will persist until I succeed. I must say, I never knew what I was going to do. I didn't. It all came full circle and sort of coming together really nicely. But I must say to all of you, keep moving forward. Remember, this world is constantly changing. To stay abreast, one cannot be stagnant. Read, 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 and learn, learn, learn. Remember, we've gone from developing microtechnology to nanotechnology. From dimensions of 10 to the minus 6 meters to a nanometer equal to 10 to the minus 9th. A nanometer, imagine, 10 to 10,000 times smaller than the diameter of your human hair. And that's the technology we're working with now. Keep working hard, because we're moving towards that atomic level, right? I'm going to leave you with the last thought, which is one of my favorite sayings. First of all, let me say that time is so precious, and I appreciate you sharing this time. You've got about 40,000 seconds left in today, so make sure that you spend them wisely. But remember also to invest it so that you get from it the utmost in health, happiness, and the warm feeling derived from helping others be the best that they can be. The latter is the ultimate reward, and for us to be successful at our facility, we must work together. I believe in giving back to my community. We are role models, an example of intelligence and creativity that can foster some amazing things through our facility. Please pass your knowledge on. Someone gave it to you, and it's your turn to impart your knowledge to someone else. I say each one teach one, give back. Remember that the clock is ticking. I also say shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll still be amongst the stars. Okay, I know, not realistically, but you know what I mean, right? My other one is I always say peace whenever I talk. And I believe in peace and not war. My family is Buddhist, by the way, and so we believe in peace. But we also, for me, it represents something else as well. Positive energy activates continuous elevation. Peace and have a great day. Thank you. Yes?
Do you recommend finding as many mentors as possible?
Oh, yes. I have mentors for every different phase of my life. From athletic coaches, from teachers, from political activists, community representatives. I've had all different types of people who have helped me to sort of make good decisions in my life, for sure. You often want to, people tend to shy towards people that look like themselves, but Brian Keegan becoming my mentor as the AETD director, he actually, we were in a pilot program, and it was the first time, and I thought, there's no mentors that look like myself. But I was testing it as it was a test program, and I asked for him. And my second meeting with him, he said, I think I'm going to get more out of this than you are.
Okay, like that.
Thanks, this is a lot of inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have the book that you just summarized, or you're in the process of writing?
So I actually put in a very late night here last night because I thought there were so many points that I wanted to make that I actually started writing down a manuscript. So yes, I do have it in a manuscript, and I would be willing to share it with you.
Yeah, you mentioned like you know about having the knack, and you know so often like in middle schools, kids are like, oh well, I don't have the knack, so why should I, go for careers in science? And so what?
I like detective novels. I didn't think I had a knack. I love Sherlock Holmes. There was a lot of science in Sherlock Holmes.
So, like what is it, so if you don't always have, it's
puzzles, do they like puzzles? I mean, do they like thinking? I mean, there's a lot of things, aspects in our jobs that aren't just all science and math, that the pieces start coming together. But if you have a good foundation in science and math, then you apply them in a way that's creative. You apply it in a way that you're solving problems. And I think that's one of the biggest sort of skills that I have a good solving problems, critical thought, and able to solve problems. And it was just, pieces just started coming together, So thank you again for lending me those precious seconds. I really appreciate you guys coming here.
Okay, let's give
Come on.